You are tuned in to the Creative Frequency. Come with us as we explore the creative process with artists from all areas of the creative spectrum. The Creative Frequency starts now. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Creative Frequency. I'm your host, Kent Tarbox, coming to you from Studio 20 in downtown Findlay in the Jones Building. I'm glad to have you all back. If this is your first time here, this space is dedicated to conversations with artists and creatives from all over the spectrum. And this is what we do. We sit and we talk, and hopefully you walk away from this being inspired and more knowledgeable, or whatever it is you want to take away from this. I want to thank you for coming back. So we have a guest today, and I do want to point out this is my most long-distance guest I've had on the show. I'm sitting in Northwest Ohio, and I'm going to allow our guest to introduce herself and tell us a little bit about herself. So please, welcome.
Thank you. I'm in St. Pete, Florida. My name is Fahan McDonagh. I've been working in glass about 30 years at this point, and I do large projects and small sculptures and commissions and whatever.
And that's how we all start. We all do whatever. I say here from your show notes that you had sent me earlier, you work in primarily kiln glass, but you do some hot glass or flame working. Can you briefly tell us what differentiates kiln from hot from flame?
Sure. Okay, so kiln forming and casting is a process where the glass is put into the kiln cold, raised up in temperature to whatever you want to happen to it, and then brought back down very slowly. So the glass isn't worked out of a furnace. It all stays in the kiln the whole time. Glass blowing is dipping a pipe into a furnace, turning and shaping however you want, blowing into it and creating a bubble that can become whatever you want it to be. Flame working is like glass blowing, but it's more like melting. So you're taking cold rods, putting them directly in a flame and changing their shape or creating something from that. And that can be done in a blowing way too with tubing. So they're all a little bit different application.
Okay. Out of the three, do you have a preference? Do you like to work in one medium more than the other, or are they all equally a passion for you?
I think I've just been doing it all so long. I was in flame working first, and I worked for an artist doing production and for his studio. And then I then I went to graduate school and moved into glass blowing more. And I did that for Disney for several years, 6 or 7 years, doing production for Main Street and Magic Kingdom. And then I came over to St. Pete to run a private studio, which required me to basically use all of my skills. So it was blowing, casting, fusing, whatever we needed for the application. So I really got to push my skills a lot more with that. Yeah, they're all a little different. And I would say that the right application goes with the idea. It depends on what you're trying to get across.
So when you look at each one of these, and I'm going to ask you then, when you look at the different types of work, how do you define creativity in the mediums that you work with? What is creative to you in that medium?
I think the creation is more about the idea for me. Coming up with the idea and then kind of figuring it out is the challenge and what draws me in. Once I know how to, or I have the idea figured out and laid out in my mind, then I can pick which way I want to create something to display or how best I can get that information across to my viewer.
Where do you get inspiration for the idea? Where's the idea come from? Do you wake up at 2 a.m. and write something down on a notepad? Are you walking down the street and see something? Where do you draw this from?
Well, a lot of my content comes from walking. I do a walking meditation in the mornings for a few hours, depending on how long I have to dedicate to it. But it's usually out there being quiet in nature that things come to me. But it's happened through other forms of meditation as well as making. And so my business name is Making Meditation. I feel like the repetition of creating is allowing me to stop the thinking. So all the pay your bills and get gas in the car and all of that stuff. And then at that point, you really can let the flood come in. And glass blowing is just about turning and rolling, and you kind of can think about other things.
I've watched and I've mentioned this, I think, when Ian was on here, and I've talked to other glass blowers, not in this context. My
Mhm.
level of anxiety is so high when I watch glass blowers because you're working with this molten glass. And
Yeah.
I live fairly close to the Toledo Museum of Art, and they have a huge glass center, and
Yeah,
we've
I've
seen the
been
glass
there.
blowing. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
beautiful, right? And they've
it
got
is.
this wet, wadded up newspaper with no gloves on, and it just it does, and our
It
son's the
seems
same
like
way.
it wouldn't work.
You would think, "Oh my god, these people are nuts," right? Because I grew up, I remember taking welding class, right? And you had the apron, and you had the gloves, and you've got the shield, and you've got all this stuff, and here these people, they're just chunking away, and they got on shorts and tennis shoes, and they're just doing their thing. And I've seen it at different places, and it's just I'm like, "Wow." So I have a high level of admiration and respect for working with this material in such a casual manner, but I gotta believe, and we all know this to be true, it didn't start out that casual, I have to assume. It's a practiced, learned
No,
skill.
and I would say that, the longer you've been doing it, maybe the more relaxed you are about it, which can
Right.
be dangerous. But also it becomes like a ballet, and not just glass blowing, but just any kind of glass making. There's a order of operations to everything, and it becomes sort of like I need 2 steps to get here and 2 dips of color to make this happen. Whatever, so it just becomes like a body memory. I
Right.
think it's more like ballet than is like welding.
Okay.
It's got
I
kind of
appreciate
that
that.
dance to it.
I've never heard it put that way, but when I sit here and think about what I've seen, a couple of shows on TV on Netflix, we watched that Blown Away and
Sure,
some different
yeah.
things that it does. There is a choreography to it, and I wanted to comment on a statement you made earlier. It sounds too that when you get into your work, you get into this flow state that
It's the
it
goal.
goal.
I usually walk away if I'm not getting there because that's when I get burnt or I must be distracted
Sure.
so yeah, the goal is to be feeling really comfortable in that state and just letting it all kind of happen. It's like almost looking down at your hands and they're doing it and you're a third person. It's pretty
Right.
wild.
Let's talk about that because this is an interesting concept. We talk about creating a lot. Let's talk about the walking away for a minute. I don't know
Mhm.
if people I think as creatives, and I do a lot of photography,
Mhm.
and I'm around a lot. I'm up here with 19 other artists up here in these lofts and stuff. And there's this drive amongst creatives to create, right? That's what we do. We create, we create, you
Mhm.
do, you do, you do. And when we're not, sometimes there's a guilt or there's a dissatisfaction sets in. But I think knowing when to walk away is critical. And obviously
Mhm.
you have mastered this. Now, is this something that has also come, and I'm not going to use the term age, I'm going to use the term vintage. I like that term. We are of a certain vintage, but 30 years ago, could you have walked away or would you have just soldiered through it because that's what you do for your art?
Well, I don't soldier through it for my art. When I am making production for someone else, if I'm on the clock or something like that, this was back in the days before I had a business, I would take a break if I needed one, if I got really frustrated or something, but it would be a 15-minute break and back to work kind of deal.
Right.
And as I've been making art for so long at this point, I mean, I just know if I feel frustrated or I have some kind of anxiety going on or my mind's distracted, it's not going to come out and be its most authentic version. It's going to be some kind of muddled mess where oftentimes I get hurt. So
Right.
I just don't do it. I can make one thing on the torch and walk away and just be like, "Okay, not today, torch.
Right.
I don't know if I had too much coffee. I don't know why I'm feeling like this or whatever."
Right.
I break stuff and I burn myself when I'm in not in this flow. So I know
Right.
better now.
Right. It's funny. I've played a lot of golf for 40 some years.
Yeah,
And sometimes there's a parallel, and it's the same thing. Sometimes I'm out there and it's just happening. Man, it's just going
you're
and
in
it's
the
just
flow.
smooth.
Yeah.
And then there's other days it's like, what am I doing? I can't do anything right. It's a struggle. I do that when I photograph games. I'll be photographing a football game or a baseball game or basketball, and man, some nights it's just shot after shot. Oh my, this is great. And then other nights it's like
Yeah.
I've got garbage. I've
Right.
got nothing to send to the editor. What am I going to do? So I understand those ebbs and flows, and I think when especially younger people are starting out, I don't know if they're prepared for that, and I don't
No,
know if they always know how to work through it.
yeah, and I think that you have to really know yourself, and that kind of happens over time, right? So, in
Mhm.
your early teens or late teens, or whenever you get into your materials and start working towards mastering them, I think, you do want to soldier through and go, okay, I can fix this, I can solve this problem, or whatever. But over time you get to know yourself and you know what decision making happens and in your creative process
Mhm.
and all of that. So yeah, I think it's about
When,
experience a little bit.
yeah, again, you reach a certain
Vintage.
vintage. Yes. When did you discover in your life that a creative life was going to be your path?
I started drawing around 4 or 5, and I've had sketchbooks ever since. I did an undergrad in painting and a master's in glass sculpture, so I sort of just followed the breadcrumbs. I already learned how to draw, then I wanted to learn how to paint. When I learned how to paint, I wanted to work in 3D. I started working in ceramics and metals and these other things in my undergrad. Got a job working for a glass blower, and that led me to fall in love with glass, and then I started making some, and then I went to school for that, and so it's everybody's path is gonna be different depending on,
Sure.
what leads you along.
Did, um did you come from a creative family? Did you have influences around you, brothers, sisters, parents, something, or was just are you the odd duck? Is everybody else an engineer and you blow glass? I because there it come people come from all over, so I wanna hear maybe where your background was there, if you don't mind sharing.
So, my dad and my mom are both musicians, and they both also write, so poetry, songs, stuff like
Mhm.
that. My dad is passed at this point, but even up until the end, he was in a band. So
Sure.
very much dedicated to his music, and that would be like his outlet.
Mhm.
And my mom ended up being a nurse for her profession, but she always played guitar. And now that she's retired, she has all the strings. She has a piano. I mean, she plays mandolin. It's all over the place. So a very creative, I guess I'm used to that. And I come from a big Irish family with a lot of creative people too, working in different mediums,
Sure.
photography and yeah. So yeah, it seems like we have a sensitive side to us a bit.
Okay. I
Yeah.
like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's interesting. My mother was classically trained on the piano and
Mhm.
played piano for the church and the only thing I can and I love music and I've said this before, the only thing I can play is an iPod. I tried all
I'm
the
not
different I
that
don't
great at
have it.
it either, but I
Yeah,
appreciate
I
it.
just don't have it again, but I had a grandfather that he did photography and he actually back in the day, he had a Super 8 movie camera, which was
Oh, wow.
not a lot of people back then had it. So, we have
Wow.
these different influences in our life and I was in photography, then I got out of it, and then I got back into it. Actually, when our daughter turned 14 and like a lot of 14-year-old girls in that day, I'd like to get a camera, okay, cool, here, and it re-sparked and rekindled that spirit in me, and here I am now.
And
I
something
get
you
it.
could do together too. We're
We do
always
well,
I have
you
a
would
child too. She's 25 now, but trying
yeah,
to find a common ground to do something with them that they
right.
find inspiring and you find inspiring.
It's funny
Special.
because my wife will tell you the worst thing you can do is put us to get Chelsea and I together. Whatever spirit or deity or whatever in the universe that you believe in has a sense of humor because it took my personality and put it in a female form in our daughter, and it took my wife's
Yeah.
personality and put it in male form in our son.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, and our son's like he's like 6 foot,
Freaky Friday.
he's like 240 pounds, right? And he's this gentle giant, right? And my daughter got called out in junior high school one time for being too aggressive playing floor hockey with the boys in the gym. So, um, but yeah, we do meet. We are, and our son's creative too. He writes, He's been published in RPG games and that. So yeah, it's nice being around creatives. It's nice having that creative discussion and that creative bent that runs through your
Mhm.
family.
Mhm.
Um, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Do you have maybe one story where one time in your life you can remember a particularly inspiring experience, one that just, if you could go back and you could just say, that's one I'll just never forget?
Particularly, let me see. Huh. I
You
make
didn't know
so
you were going to
many
have to
I make
think, did
so
you?
many things. I'm like, let's peel back the layers of everything that I've made.
Yeah.
Particularly inspiring, though. A lot of times, things will come from the water because I work with glass. So a lot of times in nature, things with water, you know,
Hmm.
and light. And I'll tell you a little story. When I was in graduate school at RIT, I was hiking every day, 2 to 3 hours every day in the snow and whatever, all the time, even if it's up to my waist.
Yeah.
And I was way out in the woods in this park, and at that time of year it was winter, and all the leaves were off the trees, and all the trees were black, and the snow was white. It was this very stark contrast. And the trees were the only thing making the light take shapes anywhere. So all these trees were leaving these bands of light on the trees across the little creek from them, and I was kind of walking on a path on this creek. And I started to think about how that light landing on the tree, like maybe that was like a window to something else inside there, or what's happening energetically with that light on the tree, like this little hole. So I ended up casting a huge piece of tree bark and cutting out a band of light in the center and polishing it so you could see light through the back of
Oh,
it and
cool.
through the front of it. And yeah, I think just sometimes it can be something so simple as that, and then when you manifest it into a greater sculpture, it becomes something kind of else. But I
Hmm.
think it was just the simple way that the light was landing on the trees was really beautiful. So it can be simple, it can be complicated. I don't know.
Right. It's well, and again, there's common themes. It seems now. I've interviewed. You're my 17th artist now, and there are themes.
Hmm.
And I think it's good for everyone to hear this, that one, we're not alone. We all kind of seem to suffer from, and I don't use the term suffer poorly, but we do go through the same things.
Hmm.
And we find inspiration from maybe the strangest places. And what I have
Can be.
found is, and so you took this and you didn't think about what it might end up or whatever, you just made it happen.
I just let the idea start coming out of me once I got
Right.
in the studio. So I was out walking and I thought, wow, that's a really neat idea. And then I would just kind of play with it in my mind. Like I was reading all these books about zero and nothingness and Buddhism and emptiness. And my whole thesis was based on walking meditation. So
Right.
at the time, that was what I was, you know, like trying to understand the thing that's there and the thing that's not there and the space in between what's happening.
Right.
I found as a sculptor that the space in between can be where everything happens sometimes.
Right.
And I really wanted to try to just let that come out naturally. And so I got in the studio and I had what techniques I knew, and uh was out another couple days later and found this giant piece of tree bark, and I'm like, "Oh, I'm supposed to use this."
Right.
So I
Right.
really do, like, follow breadcrumbs, you know? I think that's how I get to the idea, and also how I get to the finished product.
I find your comment about space interesting because I'm a huge Pink Floyd fan.
Me too.
Yeah, okay, and
Vintage.
we're gonna get to, yeah, we are of a vintage. I've said this before, you get that, what 5 albums would you have if you were stranded on a desert island? Well, Dark Side of the Moon's number 1, and then probably 4 more Pink Floyd albums. But when Alan Parsons was helping them, was recording Dark Side of the Moon, and I've heard other producers talk about this, is they have to encourage their artists to leave space. You don't have to fill everything. And if you
Mhm,
listen to Pink Floyd and you listen to some of these, it's the space.
Mhm.
that's captivating, and I find that too in photography. We have a thing, negative space. You grow up hearing fill the frame, fill the frame, fill the frame, meaning let's get, get it up there, get it for us.
Yeah.
I had a sports
Get
editor
as
for
much
years.
design
Yeah,
in
I
there as you can.
I swear to God, if he could just have the baseball in that would have been his picture. And so a lot of times people aren't comfortable with negative space. It creates that feeling of nothing or loneliness or whatever. And I find negative space to be very impactful, much the same as I work predominantly in black and white. My wife has criticized me for years. She's like, does your camera shoot in color? It does. It can on rare
But not
occasion,
very often.
but not very often. And again, it's just that's kind of my thing. And even black and white creates some of that negative. It creates more space sometimes, I think, than color. And I'm sure
I
there's
think
a
so
hundred people
too.
that could argue that with me, but it's my show.
No, I agree with that. And at first starting out making professional work in grad school, I stuck to clear a lot.
Hmm.
Clear, white, one color, gray, you know. I have such a colorful palette now, but at that time I was really trying to see what the material was doing and get really good at
Right.
getting my idea across without having it to be with 18 colors in it. And now I understand where the color fits into my work, but
Right.
at that time I was also living in a very kind of that stark black and white environment in upstate New York, and I think that inspired me too,
Hmm.
and probably to think about space like that in a different way.
When you encounter a roadblock, or what is a roadblock that you've encountered in your process that just stopped you, and how did you work your way through it? Maybe you haven't had one.
Well, sometimes, I have to make especially raising a child and everything, I had to make decisions about my finances. And sometimes it was like, you're going to stop making this project because you have to do this one, or you have to
Sure.
go work for somebody else for a while, or whatever it was. It's usually when I have to make those kind of like practical decisions that I have roadblocks with my creativity. And now I've sort of mixed it all together, and I don't really encounter that now as much, but did I would say that your roadblocks are you. So
Hmm.
the more that you're accepting what you are and what your responsibility is to all of your actions, it's easier to be aware of it and then also do something about it. It's more like when you're in that muddy water that, you can't do anything about that, so you have to get some clarity and some ownership about what you're doing, and that just takes time sometimes too.
Right.
It's just you gotta walk away or you go do something else or, you know.
See, that kind of leads into a common theme too that runs where we hear a lot of people talk about imposter syndrome.
Mhm.
And I think imposter syndrome, my opinion, I'm going to ask you if this has happened to you. To me, it's a very nice word for self doubt.
Yeah.
And did you have or have you had periods of self doubt, periods of imposter syndrome?
I didn't think of it as imposter syndrome, but, working backwards from a semi-traumatic childhood to now. I've just been having to build the self-worth and self-love and confidence, all those things coming along with making all the time. Stuff's coming out, people are receiving it, things are looking good. Everybody doesn't like everything, I don't care. You
And we're going to
start
talk
kinda
about that.
you kinda build through that, and I like to call it rhino skin. You
Yes.
kinda grow some, and you're
Yes.
like, "Okay, if this happens, that'll be fine. I would like this to happen, but I don't know." You're not in control of everything. You
Right.
just kinda have to let life happen and I guess maybe not take yourself so seriously too, which you do when you're young because 'cause you're really trying to push and get out there and be
Mhm.
all that you can be or whatever. And, it ends up being sometimes you're not that nice to yourself and you get
Right.
in those weird situations where you don't feel like you're good enough. And it's just because you're trying too hard.
Right. It's wow. There's a lot there, and we're going to talk about a few of those. Yes. I think anybody who is creative in anything, puts anything out there for public consumption is extremely brave.
Yeah,
Okay.
and it's that's
Because
scary, just the littlest thing, anything.
yeah,
Yeah.
because you're going to hear if you're anywhere near your work while it's on display in a gallery or at the opening or something, and they don't know who you are, they don't know you're the artist, you're going to
Mhm.
hear some comments that they're not going to be kind. And I had one of those, and people have heard this before. I was my first juried photo show when I started getting back into this. And I
Mhm.
had 2 out of 3 photos entered in, so I only had 1 juried out, and it was a big deal. I'm like, "Oh, that's cool." And it's hanging on the wall, and I'm standing there, and I'm kinda, "Wow, look at me, I'm on the wall at this
Excited.
gallery." And there's these 2 women standing there with their little wine glasses and their Michael Kors bags, and this one lady looks at the other and she says, "You know, it wouldn't be a photo show if there wasn't some black and white picture of a cemetery with a tree in it," and just rolled her eyes and walked away. And, you
Oh,
know,
wow.
listen, I played football, I'm ex-military, blah, blah, blah. I was gut
Right.
punched,
Oh,
and I'm thinking, kiss my right?
yeah.
And then though, a couple of minutes later, a couple other people come up and they stood there and talked about it for 3 minutes. And it moved and they
Sure.
liked the shadows and they liked the way it played. And it wasn't just a straight on. I mean, it was a creative shot. So you learn right away, or you do learn maybe over time. Make it, put it out there, you own it. It's mine. If you like it, fine. If you don't, I really don't care. And I
Well,
know
you
that
have to get
sounds
past that point. You have to
yes,
get past that point in your life too, just about letting other people's opinions determine how you behave or how you make
right,
or anything.
right,
And so you have to go, oh, it's not that you don't care what people think. You care, but you can't let it disturb your creative flow or your inside space. You have to care enough about yourself to not let it in, so
right.
to speak. And that's what I
And
mean by rhino skin. You kinda
oh
develop it
yeah,
over time. You hear enough of those comments, you're like, "It's not that I don't care, but I don't care."
right. It's exactly.
Yeah.
And we do. I care about what I'm putting out there, but I also and again I've reached that point in my life, and I've known this for quite a few years. Is I can only control what I can control, and I can't control much, and I
Mhm.
can't control at all what other people are going to think or going to say. So I don't care.
Or do. Yeah.
I'm not
Nothing.
going to waste my precious time on this planet worrying about shit that I can't control.
Right, and you wanna
And
spend your time making those beautiful photographs instead, you know? You really
yeah,
start
yeah,
to
the
wanna
one out of
focus on your favorite thing and not that
right,
stuff.
the 1 out of 50 that I get right. I've had several artists, and I want your take on this. They have said you need to make bad stuff. Have you made bad stuff?
Oh, yeah, and I've broken a lot of stuff.
Yeah,
And I've thrown things away, they were so bad, I was like, and then I'd think later, "Man, I kinda like that thing. Maybe I should make it again."
right?
So
Can get it out
it
of you
happens
can't
to
get it out
all
of
of
the bin,
us,
right?
right? It was too heavy, you know? So at that point, no, I think that happens to everyone. Making bad
I
stuff is kind of part of deciding what you want and who's it bad to, and, it's all
right.
about you.
Now you said you've done some you do some teaching in that. Is that correct?
Yes.
When you do this teaching, I have to assume you incorporate not only the technical aspects of how you're doing this, but do you have these kind of discussions with people? Do
Yes.
you talk about the mental state? You talk about the rhino skin. Doing the glass is one thing,
Mhm.
and I don't want to minimize it. It's not a small thing, but it's a part of the overall process.
I
And
think
what
it's a
kind of
big thing. What is happening in your mind is what you attract, is what you create, is what comes out of you. And so your mind is where we start the creative process. And with my students, and like I said, my business is called Making Meditation. Talk to them about being in that flow state and how to use repetition to relax and, you know, I mean, everybody in our country is on every kind of pill for this, just anxiety and depression and
right,
whatever, always trying to calm down, really.
right,
And you can calm down if you can calm down your mind without
right.
anything, and that's my goal is working towards that. And I've had anxiety most of my life too. So I know it's something that I'm not alone in or anything, but Yeah, it's just where your brain is part of your practice,
I
and so
oh,
trying to
I
keep your brain healthy is real important.
it is terribly important, and it not just in your creative life, because I know in my previous life, boy, I really enjoy saying that now. In my previous corporate life, I would wake up at 2 in the morning and I would get what I call busy brain,
Yeah,
and my mind would just take off. And I don't care how hard I tried, I wasn't going back to sleep because the next day's project or the next day's, I had 8 facilities and a staff of 3 people, and I'm trying to juggle all this, and you know how you talk about that
I
inspirational process
understand.
where one thing leads to another? The busy brain. One thing leads to, I
It's
got
hard
this,
to
I got
find your path where your breadcrumbs
right,
are. Yeah, I know. I
and then
understand
all of a
that.
sudden you're just waste. You're just sitting there and you're like, "My God, I'm exhausted and haven't done anything."
Yeah.
You know? Well, it's because you woke up at 2 in the morning, you didn't fall back asleep till 4, and you woke up at 5. And I that can happen to us, and you're right. I like to the idea of controlling what we can control, and I do think that comes with age sometimes too, and because 'cause we've been there. I was the same way. I explained to my kids that, 65-year-old Kent isn't 30-year-old Kent, and it's still there, but things have changed,
Yeah.
and
And what
perspectives
and what
change.
you will accept and,
Yeah.
just how you feel about yourself, it changes as you get through some of this. But I think it's great that we all have this outlet anyway, because it's allowed me to get through times of overwhelm and worry
Mhm.
and whatever sadness, the grief of my dad passing. Sometimes the hard stuff is when the great work comes out.
Right.
Um, so, I mean, it's like you want the contrast, you want the ups and downs, but you just have to have a way to manage it that is not unhealthy.
Right.
And
Right, and
we all bounce around in that place sometimes, but
we have seen that on more than one occasion.
yeah,
I had an author on here, a writer,
yeah.
and it was interesting discussing with her the same thing, that there's this image and this picture of, especially an author or a writer, that you're in some hotel room and you're in a room in the Chelsea hotel and it's 3 in the morning and you're on your 3rd bottle of bourbon and there's 2 empty packs of Marlboro laying next to you, and the next thing you know, you're
Yeah.
launching yourself out the window. And she said,
Or
it's
you're
not that,
writing your best work.
or you're writing your best work. You're absolutely correct.
It's
And it's
weird.
not like that hasn't happened,
Yeah.
but it was interesting. She said, "I'm a mom. I've got 5 kids. I'm writing in my bedroom on a laptop when everybody goes to bed. This isn't this
Yeah.
tortured
Or
soul
5
thing."
in the morning before people wake up
Right,
or something.
right. You get your half hour to yourself. And again, I think it's good for people to hear this, and I don't think we hear it enough, even in our creative community, that we all do the same thing. We work in different
Mhm.
mediums,
Mhm.
but we all go through the same thing, and everybody's at a different level in their process.
Mhm.
And I think it's good to hear people talk about how they get through their process. You talked about earlier, and I'm going to ask you, do you have a balance? And I know the answer to this, between your creative responsibilities and your life responsibilities. Is that where that's where the meditation comes in and allows you to, I guess the term maybe, center and refocus when needed?
Yeah. I mean, I know how to do it anywhere. So I don't have to be sitting on a mat or walking in the woods or whatever. I have figured out how to get myself into a a good place. And sometimes when I have scheduled blow slot or scheduled whatever, I think about it 15 minutes before and
Uh-huh.
sit down and try to let go of everything, take some deep breaths, do that kind of calming so I can focus and follow my plans for the day, whatever I'm trying to make and not your body and glass is a weird thing because it responds to you because you're turning it, and then you have gravity that's actually your friend, but can work against you if you're not turning it. So, it's a lot about kind of just keeping in a clear state of mind. And then
What
everything just happens. Here's your little plans, and you draw them on the floor or whatever.
right. What I've seen, what I noticed when we were watching the Blown Away series, is that there is a very physical aspect to glasswork.
Mhm.
and it looks exhausting, and me, I told my wife I should do it because I could probably stand to lose 20, 30, 40 pounds. And that looks like a great way to sweat it off because at the end of these shows, these people, they look dehydrated, they're soaked in sweat.
Mhm.
Do you factor and understand how I'm gonna ask this, do you factor that in when you reach a certain vintage? Do you have a time frame, or do you have a limitation where you say, "My body, I can't do any more today because I'm physically done"? Do you factor that in when creating, or when you hit that flow state, you just go, and then when it's done, it's done?
No, I think about it because I produce artwork for designers and other people and all this kind of stuff. Like lately, I'm working on a hanging sculpture of these like really large blown pieces, and I had them made by another artist, Dan Alexander, because he's bigger than me and he can lift the pipe and do these things. I can make
Mhm,
the smaller versions of it, but at this point in my life, after doing a lot of blowing production, I have some shoulder issues and no, all of that is part of it. You have to think about your body and try to be nice to yourself. And sometimes it means subbing out something that I could do, but I don't want to do or hurt myself doing. And then, other times I hire people to help me put things together because the time frame needs that. So it just depends. I
mhm,
definitely think about it and it is a strenuous activity and I like to say that the glass blowers are the truck drivers of the art world because we're just like or construction workers,
sure,
we might as well be roofers. We're like standing in front of 4,000 degrees all the time.
right,
So it's not for nobody does it to be like famous. You
uh,
do it because you really want to do it.
right.
And you
You
practice it when no one's looking because you really got to practice it. It's hard.
right,
So it's
yeah,
not about any of that stuff. It's a hard job and when you get into it, it feels so great, and maybe it feels like when you would play football or something. You're done and you take a shower and you have, like, a break after that and have a glass of whatever or water.
oh, we used to have beer.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna
well,
lie, we'd have a beer. Um,
yeah, it's usually a bear in the shower.
yeah, it could be, and God, I was in high school.
Well, I just mean that, like, real exertion, though, you kinda have, like,
Yes,
a satisfied feeling after that, and then
you
you can
do.
rehydrate and eat and do whatever else you need to do, but while you're doing it, it is very depleting and,
Yes.
works a bunch of muscles you don't usually use and all of that.
Yeah, it's and again, and I bring in the vintage factor because every year when I go out and I'm standing on the sidelines at a college football game or a high school football game and maybe a pro game, but like high school, I think, "Oh my god, I would just one more time, I'd love to play." And then I see a couple of 17-year-old kids that are twice as big as me go out there and just absolutely destroy each other, and I'm go, "You idiot," you
You're
know?
like, "Oh, my knees hurt just watching you."
And the one's not even an original, I've got replacement parts in my knees now.
Okay, yeah. That
So,
a lot of people
but
do.
yeah, what is it? The mind is willing, but the body's just not able. And
Yeah.
and I think sometimes too in our creative process, we look at our age, we look at our maturity level, we look at our experience, and I think that helps us. And it may dictate what we do and what we don't do. And sometimes it's a been there, done that thing, but other times it's knowing ourselves. And I think that's important.
Mhm.
If you were going to when you get the opportunity to tell young people, and I'm gonna say like maybe high school kids or young in their early 20s. What advice do you give them if they want to venture down the creative path? What do you tell them?
Well, I did teach high school for several years too.
Okay,
And, so I am very familiar with the teenage group. I don't tell them it's easy and nothing is handed to you and you have to really want it, so it's a dedication, but also that anybody that wants it can have it.
right,
You just have to not give up. And so
right,
I really harp on the not giving up. They don't really know themselves fully at that age, but I kind of let them know that as you grow, things will become more clear to you and, that kind of way. So I just encourage people for the most part. It doesn't
right.
really help to criticize much unless they are in a stage where they already kind of know themselves. like in a
Right.
grad school situation or upper level teaching, in those cases, then people really want your opinion because of your background knowledge and your experience. And they
Right.
want to know maybe why I should put this white thing over here or why this box doesn't work over there or whatever it is. And, that has a place. It's just not really with kids. The kids
Right.
need the encouragement, and especially if they're not getting it at home. So
Right.
I taught for 7 years, like drawing and painting and sculpture.
I think, and I've said this before, and I repeat myself, but I think it's important. I think what we do in this country to our students is a crime. It's a disservice. Is we look at an 18-year-old and say, "Okay, you're out of school. What are you going to do with the rest of your life?" You
Yeah.
haven't had one yet. You've had a part of one. You've had
That's
an
why they don't
introduction.
know what their major is. You can't blame
Right.
them. I say the
Right.
same thing. They got to
And it was interesting.
flip-flop a little bit usually.
You don't know what you're going to do. And I loved it. Our daughter went to art school, and our son went to traditional 4-year university, and he went there and he was undecided, and we were thrilled with that. And the counselor will tell you, he said, I'd rather have kids come in here undecided because the first year is general ed anyway, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And there were parents in that room though. They were so upset because they should be, look in that room, that's engineers, and over here's math people, and over here science people. And the counselor, the guy said, look, I've been doing this for 30 years. 80% of those people aren't going to finish in that room they started in. Okay. Because they don't know. Because
Percent. I mean, think about that. I'm all
yeah,
about the gap year, but my daughter didn't do it, and then she ended up having to kind of flip around and figure some different things
right,
out with it. So, and I kind
right.
of, my cousin has that age child right now in Ireland, and I'm like, just tell her to take a year off,
Yeah,
but she's already in school for engineering. So it's like sometimes you're fighting with your own kid because they want to go get it and get it done so that they can move on with their life. At the same time, you need to figure out who you are so you can pick the
right.
right thing. So it's tricky. I think
It
it's
was in
real hard on kids, actually.
it is. I turned 18 and graduated high school, and 6 weeks later I was in the US Navy for a variety of reasons, and a lot of it was to get away from the situation I was in and get away from my hometown, and plus I have that wandering spirit. I'm one of the what's around the next corner, what's over the next hill, let's go down this road and see where it takes us.
Yeah.
So I kinda had what I call a regimented gap, 4 years, because I was in the military, so I got a paycheck, I had a place to sleep, I had a place to eat, but I got to
Hmm.
travel all over the world. And I had no responsibility but to myself, and, you had to be on the ship at a certain time, and that was it. When you walked
Do your
off on a
job you're
Friday,
assigned.
yep, do your
Yeah.
job and then go do whatever you wanna do. And boy, that was there was things that were forming in my life then, forming my creative life, my personal life, that I didn't realize were happening. And to me, for me, it was one of the best educations you could get. Now,
Sure.
I got back, did the life thing, went back to college, did this, did that, got the advanced degrees, blah, 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 and I don't regret any of it.
Mhm.
But when I talk to young people, and I enjoy when young people come up to the studio here, we do an art walk,
Mhm.
and some of them are interested in what I do. I'm very honest with them, like you too. I say, "Yeah, you can do this, but you gotta want it, and you're gonna
Mhm.
work, and you're gonna work a lot, and
Mhm.
you're gonna run into a lot of obstacles, and you're going to have a lot of doubt, but you're gonna have to work through it, and you
Mhm.
can."
Yeah.
And I don't care whatever it is you wanna do. If you wanna be an actor, go act. If you wanna be a musician, go try to be a musician. If you wanna be a teacher, go teach. But whatever it is you wanna do, commit to it.
Mhm.
And I think the creative process is very much like that, is that I'm going to create, and that's what it is for me. And it sounds like you and I are on the same page with that.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, we're
It's a decision.
we're coming up on 50 minutes here.
Okay.
One question I ask, and we did get back to this. What's on your playlist
On my music playlist?
when you're blowing glass or working with it? What's on your playlist?
Oh, wow, I listen to everything. I'm literally between the Grateful Dead and, latest, like, French pop, so
Okay,
I'm all over the place. I like a
okay,
lot of punk music when I'm in the mood. I'm not real big on heavy metal, but pretty
right?
much everything else I listen to.
Okay.
Yeah.
I had, and I get the same thing. I get it. Most of us are all over the scale. I am not as much. I can't do country. I'm sorry if I lose a
Oh, yeah.
subscriber. I do.
I'm
Yeah.
not really a country either,
There
but
we go. See, I
yeah.
know. And the interesting thing is when you're doing photography, if you're in the studio, oftentimes you don't have the music going because you're interacting with your model or whatever. I do mine when I go out. I do a series called Roadkill where I wander about the countryside and I take pictures of derelict buildings and things. That's when I've got Pink Floyd on.
That sounds pretty fun though. That sounds like a great adventure.
It is. It is. It's 7 years going now, and I love it. And that's my therapy.
Yeah.
Gas at $4.50 a gallon isn't helping any, but um, that's where I kind of get into my flow state. I go out, I get lost
Mhm.
on purpose and see what I
Sure.
can find. Is there anything I haven't asked you that you wished I had?
I don't think so.
Is there
I don't know.
anything you'd like to just put out there that in closing, anything you want people to know or you feel inspired at the moment to say? I just put her on the
I'm
spot.
I'm a big supporter of our other artists, so if anybody has a question or, wants to talk to me about something, I'm here.
Okay. That being said, I want everybody out there to know because this does go out audio only as well, that you can see Fawn's work at fahanskymcdonagh.com. And all these links are going to be in the show notes and stuff, and they'll be available to you. She is on Instagram at FS McDonagh, which is FSMCDONAGH. She's got a couple of exhibits coming up. Mad Rose Gallery, New York, opening the second week of June. That sounds exciting. And let's see, we're going to be at the International Festival of Glass in St. Helens, UK. That's what August, October, and part of the British Glass Biennale and organized by the Glass Art Society. And you're going to be at Siachi Art with a hanging sculpture in the Royal Palm Hotel. Is that what, May 15th? Is that the opening for that?
It was supposed to be, but it's been postponed a little bit. But
Okay.
that was the hanging sculpture I mentioned earlier
Okay.
that I got help with.
Great. And lastly, on her show notes that she sent me, we're making lily pads in the
Mhm.
studio. They go along with a wall installation with her lotus flowers. So I encourage you to please seek her out online. Take a look at her work. I've seen it out there. It's beautiful work. I love the lily pads. I love the glass. And every time I get something, we have to make room for something else now. There may be a piece
Yeah.
coming. There may be a piece coming my way. I'll have to see what I can get from you. All right, everybody.
Okay.
I want to thank you. I want to thank our guest Fawn for taking time to share her creative journey and her process with us. I want to thank you for joining us here at the Creative Frequency, and I encourage you to come back and meet our next guests. So again, thank you very much. Fawn, thank you. I really appreciate your time, and everybody have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to the Creative Frequency. You know what to do. Like, follow, and subscribe. Then join us again for the next episode of The Creative Frequency.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.